Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm giving you my first impressions of Teotihuacan, City of Gods from Board and Dice. And this is very much a first impressions video. We just finished playing 45 minutes ago, everyone's left, and it's currently 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to go ahead and give you my thoughts on my first and only play of Teotihuacan. And if you're wondering why first impressions, why not a review, why not dive into it more, see all the modules, the expansions, there's a lot of reasons, but the most important one is this showed up 2 days ago. The relaunch campaign for this is today, and I figure I can either give you much more detailed thoughts in not enough time to make a decision, or I can give you these first impressions, these initial thoughts now. And I will say this is very not structured. If you like the structure of my usual reviews, whether it's the official review format, the rapid fire review format, if you like the general structure I have, none of that's going to be present here. I don't have jotted down notes of what I like, don't like, and see others not liking. I haven't really thought about any of the things I'm going to say. I'm just going to tell you what I think of my first experience, the pros and the cons, whatever comes to mind as I go through this. So if you like the chaos and the less structure, this is for you. If you don't, this might not be a video for you because I don't know where this is going to go past me telling you what I think of the game. I will loosely tell you how to play the game. Very, very loose. I'm not going to fully go into it, but I'll tell you the general structure of what's going on here, because I think always a little bit of structure is helpful to understand a bit more if you're not already familiar with the game. And to that end, Teotihuacan, first of all, is a very popular game. I believe there's a solo mode. It's a 1 to 4 player game. Yep, 1 to 4 players. There's a solo mode, which I haven't played. I played a 3-player game. It's going to last well, let's take a step back. Before we get into how long it lasts, this is a very popular game in the Board Game Geek Top 100. I think it's currently at 90 right now. And this is the Deluxe Master Set, which comes with it comes with the base game. It comes with the deluxeified components. It comes with all the various expansions. It comes with all the various goodies, of which I've gotten to experience the base game and nothing else. Because, like I said, one play, and I usually start with the base game when I have the first play of a game. Past that, as far as how the game plays, what it is you're doing, you're kind of working your way through 3 eclipses while you work to build this pyramid structure over here. You see, you have this little track over here where you're going to be tracking this little marker that's going to move up at the end of every round, and some other things can cause it to move up as well, but when this marker goes ahead and hits this over here, when it lands on that, an initial eclipse is triggered, which is going to trigger a scoring round, as well as a little bit of maintenance paying for your workers, which are your dice that are going to be moving around this board in a rondel fashion. And you're going to do that 3 times, meaning not moving around the board, but you're going to have 3 eclipses. After the first eclipse, you finish the round, finish the next round. It gives you a little time to prepare. Then you go through a bit of scoring to try to see what ways you can get points, which again, I'm not going to fully go into. I'm trying to give you loose notes on how things play, but there's a bunch of areas that will give you points during an eclipse round. Then you reset the marker, you move this back a spot, and rinse and repeat the cycle 3 times before you go to endgame scoring. That's kind of the loose structure of the game. As far as on your turn is going to consist of you taking your workers, your dice, and moving them in a rondel fashion around the board to try to go ahead and activate these 8 different regions on the board. So you take a die, you move it 1, 2, or 3 regions, and then you do any number of 3 different things. You either are going to collect cacao, which is going to be a core resource in the game to pay for, well, other people being in your way a lot of the time. And if you collect cacao, you're doing so based on the number of other colors, other players' dice that are present. It's worth noting in a 2 or 3 player game, you will have proxy dice that are in the board, so it is a little busier, giving you opportunities to get that cacao, but also costing you when you try to take the actions. You see, because the second thing you can do after getting cacao is you can go ahead and take the action of the spot, but you have to pay the cacao for the number of other color dice that are already present. So sometimes you want other dice there because you'll get the resource, other times you don't because they're going to cost you a resource when you're trying to take the actions in the game. Now the core actions of the game, well, let's cover before we cover that. The last thing you're doing is you have the opportunity to go to these areas where you can go ahead and move up these god tracks on the sideboard, as well as getting these tiles over here. So that's the 3 core actions you're doing, either getting cacao, spending cacao to take the core action, or on certain spots on the board, going up various prayer tracks over here and getting these various divine tiles as well. As far as what it is you're trying to do before before you cover these actions. There's a lot of things that will give you points, but one of them is going to be moving up these tracks where there are endgame scoring objectives at there. You're also trying to build out this pyramid structure, as well as the decorations that will go along the side of the pyramid structure as you work your way up. That's going to be these two areas over here on the board that are going to help you build that pyramid and get higher up, getting a lot of points for doing so. You're kind of trying to do everything in this game though, because everything's going to give you points. Building these various houses over here, getting these out can give you nice chunks of points as you build them, as well as going to determine the scoring multiplier at the end of the round. You're going to have science tiles, these technology tiles, that there are going to be different ones in each game, but unlocking these give you different things that will give you extra points, resources, abilities as you play through the game, so unlocking those early on can help you out. Going ahead and getting resources, getting wood and stone and gold, those will help you pay for the pyramid as well as the decorations as well as the science tiles in the game. And then over here is going to be the core palace over here, which is going to give you a way to again lock in dice to get a variety of abilities, because the key word in this game is variety. There's so much variety to the things you can unlock as you go. And so you're trying to plan out your movements around the board. You're also being mindful that generally if you can have your own dice stack in the same area, you'll get stronger abilities. Having multiple dice in the same area of your color will help you take stronger abilities, which means you are kind of playing a staggered game of moving a few dice to take an action, and then trying to figure out if you can, like, if you have a die here and a die here, trying to figure out, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and move 1, 2, take a stronger action here, then I'm going to move 1 here, take a stronger action, because the more dice you have in an area, the better your actions are. You're also pipping up your dice as you go through the game. Stronger dice can, depending on the spot, give you stronger abilities, and as you pip up the dice, you'll eventually go ahead and those dice will graduate. There's another term for them. I can't remember the term offhand, but the dice will, when they turn to a 6, they kind of expire, and then you're going to go ahead and take a benefit from this region while pipping it back down to a 1 and putting it back in the palace. So there's a lot of core puzzles you're trying to manage here, a lot of end game scoring you're working on, or end of round, end of eclipse scoring, and a lot of just general economy that you're trying to be mindful of as you watch for the other player's dice, as you try to figure out your own little puzzle that you're working towards. What is it you're trying to maximize over the next 5 or 6 turns? Because generally, that's the arc of the way you'll play the game. You'll pick a strategy, something you're working on, and you'll try to work your way towards that strategy. You want to get a bunch of technology tiles to be able to escalate the things you can do. You want to go ahead and build up a sequence of building out those pyramid tiles by staggering all your dice on the pyramid spot. You want to go ahead and get a bunch of resources to prepare for things, so you want to work your way towards a bunch of dice in the same area, but you always need to be flexible around what the other players are doing and whether it still makes sense to go to a specific area, or whether you need to pivot your actions based on going where it makes the most sense based on less crowded areas of the board. That's kind of the general puzzle of Teotihuacan. There's a ton of things that I haven't touched upon, a ton of little interweaving elements, and that's before we get into the expansion stuff, of which there is a ton. So with that under our belts, let me tell you about my thoughts of both the things I experienced, as well as the things that I like that I haven't experienced. And if you're like, how could you like something you haven't experienced? Well, let's start with that, because I guess we'll answer that question right at the bat, which is the sheer amount of variety to the way this game is structured and staggered, because there's so many things that will change up game to game. There's the basic puzzle you're playing with every single time, but then these whole areas, they're going to be separate tiles you can replace to give you a variety to these areas. There's a variety to the palace tiles that you're going to get. There's a variety to the tiles that will come out in the various areas and the way you'll gather those. There's a variety to the end game scoring in every individual area and how those will change up game to game. There's a variety to the 6 technology tiles you'll have in play every single game, and that will also give you something else to try to work towards. Like 6 different technology tiles that are, or that work in different ways as you play the game, is going to introduce players to a totally different experience as they try to figure out their own little leverages as they go through this, as well as the structure of where these various tiles are and how they operate. And so the sheer amount of variety to the game, they start with the recommended, hey, just play what's on the board, but then after that you can mix it up so quickly and so rapidly that you're never optimizing around the same puzzle twice, which is something I really enjoy in games. I also enjoy the general aspect of multiple ways to try to pursue a strategy, which this game definitely has. Again, I only played one game, but it's a fairly close game with different people pursuing different avenues and all managing to get to a fairly close end game by the time all was said and done. From focusing on moving up these tracks, from focusing heavily on building the pyramid, from gathering the in-game resources, from early game tech. There's a lot of different things you can do as far as your own unique leverages in the game, all while you're mindful around how to grow your own dice. Your own dice, as you move through the puzzle, you're trying to think through where do they want to go. Are you trying to rapidly escalate and retire them to go ahead and get a bunch of points and then work your way up this the underworld again? I can't remember the name of this area here, but you have this area that when you escalate a die, you can move further up. And if you can balance that with not building too many of these houses so that you can actually get a higher score multiplier, but then other players can counter that by going ahead and building houses to get in-game scoring and depriving you of your end-game scoring. There's so much little leverages as far as different things you can do to try to figure out what it is you're going for. Do you want to go ahead and gather a bunch of masks? Because masks can be worth a lot of endgame scoring because they score in between each eclipse. You get a bunch of those early on, you work your way up to chunks of 20, 21 points, or what's the math in it? 10, 15, 21, 28 points every single time you're going to score for the eclipse. That could be a chunk of points, but if you want to pursue those early on, you have to work very hard to pursue those early on, and everything you do in this game, like so many other games in the genre, is going to be what are you doing at the cost of the time or resources or action points that you can use towards something else. There's a lot of things that you're trying to be mindful of as you go. There's a lot of resources you're balancing, but there's a lot of ways to get those stronger turns by the cascading nature of having dice that are going to go to the same region again and again. You can, again, if you place a dice on, whatever, the gold spot over here, and then you follow it up with another dice, and you follow up with another dice, you're going to be getting more and more benefits. Combine that with this nice starting technology tile, where every time you go there, you're going to get an extra resource, and you can start going resource heavy just by having that one technology tile. Get to that technology tile first, and other players are going to be giving you points because they are going to choose that technology tile after, and the first person to each technology tile gets a benefit of, well, when other players go there, they'll get points instead. So they'll get points for having been there first. And so a lot of things you're really trying to juggle and manage that are all going to be very satisfying. Moving up these 3 core tracks are going to give you benefits as you move through them, but also benefits as you move along these tracks over here, which just gives you a lot of things to, again, move up on these tracks, like more things that you're getting done as you play through the experience. That idea that every action you take can have cascading ripples of different things that it's going to do for you. I like that in a puzzle. And I like the fact that by the time the game ended, I did feel there was a nice arc of how much I got done versus how long the game was. I always feel like when I'm playing these Euro games, I start off and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get as much done as I want to get done by the end of it. You finish round 1, you're like, I did 2 things. And you finish round 2 and you're like, I did 7 things. You finish round 3 and you're like, that was half an hour alone. And this has that arc, not necessarily as much as some tableau building games, but it definitely did feel that as we neared the end of the first eclipse, I was like, I don't think I'm going to get as much done as I want in this game. But also, this is a top 100 game, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they actually did pace it out correctly. And sure enough, they did pace it out correctly. By the time the game was done, I felt like I had gotten a good amount of things done, enough so that I want to dive back in and play and figure out more and figure out whatever little levers I can push or adjust in different ways to get more out of the experience. But also not so little that it was, deflating, like I just didn't get any of the stuff I wanted to get done this game. I mean, you can see right here, this is the endgame pyramid. We're 2 tiles shy of the additional endgame trigger, where if you finish the endgame pyramid, that will trigger the endgame even if you haven't otherwise gotten there. And based on the arc here, I feel that there's right in tempo with the game length in general. So there's a lot of things that all come together to try to give me a puzzle of where do I want to put my time, effort, and energy while managing the dice puzzle and while managing the economy that I definitely enjoyed. But there's also things that have me not quite, well, there's things that get in the way of that enjoyment. And to start off with, the balance of the cacao in this game, while it does force you to play the economy of the game, I can't say that I found the turns where I'm just trying to get the resources I need to be able to take the other actions a fun experience. It's not the end of the world. Again, most of my actions in the game are going to be towards things that I want to do, but when you are bearing down those last few turns, you have to spend 2 or 3 of them just focusing on getting your economy in play. That's not as much fun to me. It did not detract from the experience a ton. I still very much enjoy this game, but it definitely is, like, when it's crunch time, I want all those actions to go towards fun things and not just towards maintenance and ensuring that I don't pay a giant point penalty because I ended the game with no cacao when it's time to feed my people at the end of the game. And so I don't love that general balancing of things. I'd almost rather you have less actions and less actions go towards maintenance, although of course it all does come together nicely, so that would require drastic reshifting, but feeding your people as a general concept, I don't love it when it's a big part of the game, and it definitely felt like it was a big enough part of the game. I also didn't love this core puzzle over here, because when you place these tiles down, you're going to get extra points for how you rotate and maneuver them to be able to say, oh look, I covered 2 matching spots there, I'm going to get extra points. And the reason I don't love that is because that results in, I would say, not an overall rewarding experience, but rather an experience where you're looking at the tiles available to you, and then you're spending way too much time trying to look at the board and analyze and mentally contort and figure out where something goes in a way that just visually isn't, it's not visually easy to see how to twist or adjust a tile. It's just brute forcing with your time and effort of looking through things, and if somebody else builds before you, you have to start that puzzle again because there's new tiles in the pool, and what you just planned on isn't available anyway. And so this I found was needlessly hard to, I guess, see or interpret at a glance in a way that it didn't add value to the game experience. It just kind of cluttered and slowed down that particular action. Again, not the biggest deal, but certainly something small that got in the way of the experience. I also felt that the pressure of trying to make sure your dice cascade into stronger actions by having your dice go to the same spot multiple times in a row. And again, this is based off of a single play. This is a first impressions. These are just my initial thoughts. But it definitely felt like the benefit of having multiple dice in the same spot is so strong relative to having them constantly do one dice actions here and there that you kind of have to plan around a sequence of following your own dice in a little rondel mechanism across the board. Don't get me wrong, you don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You're not locked into an exact pattern, but it would be not in your best interest to freely move your dice around the board, which means you kind of are planning around a degree of follow the leader with your own dice. And so you're locked into some degree of chasing yourself around the board. And it's interesting because to me it was a mechanic that felt very reminiscent of Istanbul, but I think that the non-rondel nature of Istanbul, as well as the non-linear aspect of having dice follow each other, it's a longer story about Istanbul, but it felt similar to Istanbul while being more restrictive and less freeing. So I guess the way I'd put it is, Istanbul has a similar mechanism where you have to plan your own route to be able to go back over the same spots you were on. The nature of the way Istanbul implements it, though, to me felt like a constrictive puzzle that rewards me for trying to find my way through the constrictions to the end game. Over here, I just felt it was more constrictive. I didn't feel as rewarded for how am I going to cleverly figure my way through the system. I'm going to go in a circle, I'm going to follow my dice, and there will be some cleverness around which sequence of actions works best for me. When am I going to lock my dice into these extra zone? When am I going to free them up to be able to take some extra actions? There's a pacing to it for sure. I'm not saying there's no decisions around it. There's plenty of decisions, but I definitely felt more restrictive in that general sense of what it's doing. I think those are primarily my initial thoughts. There's a lot of expansion content here that I think would make the game even more appealing in different ways. In particular, the asymmetric factions that are going to give your faction a benefit and then a detraction that hopefully balances out, and something you're stronger at but something you're weaker at. That's just one of many, many modules that are going to add to this experience as far as giving you more things going on and more variability. But I think where I left off after my first game is I both very much enjoyed my first play of Teotihuacan, while also not being blown away. And it's interesting because I think that there's a lot of games out there that are tremendous, both older classics as well as newer ones. And I'm just thinking of recent plays I've had of games. There's Minos, which I think the review for that actually went up today or going up later today, which is a game that I just love the sheer freedom of the things I'm doing and the ways I feel powerful as I play. There's Unconscious Mind, which I hope to have a re-review for you at some point, but I've been going through the base game again and the various expansions slowly but surely. I'll have a final review at some point of all the expansion content, but it's a game when I sit down and play that, I feel everything is just incredibly intertwined. There's Sankoria, a game from last year that I loved everything the way it tweaked together. There's Orleans, which I recently just got to play in after having not played it for, 10 years. I played it when I first got into the hobby and not since then. Maybe not first. What year did Orleans came out? I played it a long time ago, let's go with that. But I just played it again and I was immediately enraptured by just how good of an experience it is. And Teotihuacan, despite being a top 100 game, it's a game that I both very much appreciate and wish that I would be spending more time with it, but I think that my level of where it's at, instinctively, my instinctive rating after one play, take it with a grain of salt, is a 4 out of 5, which is good. It's very, very good. But in this genre of game, I've consistently said, for me, the 4.5s and the 5s are the ones that blow me away, and the 4s are the ones where I want to spend more time with, but these are longer game experiences, and if it's going to take up an entire game night, it's either going to be something new that still represents the promise or the interest or the whatnot, or something that really did blow me away. And Teotihuacan, it didn't blow me away. I really enjoyed my play of it. I really enjoyed the puzzling out all the things that I can do, and I am very intrigued by the variability of the setup, as well as the modular content that would further enhance this game experience. It reminds me a bit of Tzolk'in, which maybe, I guess, because maybe the T-series is just that for me, where Tzolk'in is another game that kind of had that same vibe, where I'm like, so much of this kind of works, but it teases me with wanting to like it a drop more than I do, while still very much liking it, just in the genre of mid to heavyweight Euros. It's a very, very solid game, but not one that completely wows me. And so I think that's where I am with Teotihuacan after my first play. The way I would put it to you is the way I put it to my game group when I was talking to them, about how part of me wants to say, I'm going to play this more, I'm going to get into it, I'm going to dive into and explore so much of it, because I did enjoy this. But the other part of me knows that historically, I want to give my time to my absolute favorite games, and not the ones that were just really, really, really good. This is a very well liked and very well respected game. It is a top 100 game on BGG. I see why it is where it is. I think for me, I like my puzzles to be 10% less restrictive and 10% more freeing. I want that fun of being able to do so much more, that feeling of just getting a drop more done and a little bit less precisely making all the math work. So I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. I do recommend it. If you look at my rating scale, I generally say this, but a 3.5 is a good game, and a 4 is where I get to recommendations. I would absolutely recommend Teotihuacan. For me personally, if I'm giving, 2.5, 3 hours, well, honestly, you can play this game in 2 hours. If I'm giving 2 to 3 hours to a mid to heavyweight Euro, I think I would table something else instead. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. This has been my first impressions of Teotihuacan. If you're not someone who's played Teotihuacan, take it for what you will. If you're someone who loves Teotihuacan, I'm sorry, this is not a review. This is a first impressions. Don't let my thoughts take away from how good of a game this is to you. But that's basically my first impressions. I like it. I like it a lot. I just don't love it. Anyways, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you appreciate this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.